The Wooting 60HE. I've been using this keyboard for months now, playing video games, FPS games, and here are the best settings that I found that will give you the most advantage in game. So let's go ahead and get started right away. Okay, so here we are. I have my Wootility open over here. You just open the browser and connect your keyboard. There you go. Let's start with the color settings. Now for the RGB, the color settings, now they don't really have a huge impact, but I think lowering them or disabling the RGB effects actually give you better performance, but you won't get that extra performance unless you turn on a specific setting, and stay tuned, I will tell you in this video. You can just ignore the color RGB tab over here and set it to whatever color you like. So let's go to the performance tab. Now let's go ahead and get started with set actuation point, or the actuation point. Now you can set this from all the way to 0.1 to all the way to 4 millimeters. Now of course, logically, having the switch to 0.1 will give you the fastest response time, but having everything on 0.1 will also give you disadvantages because it will be so easy to misclick some keys. So I found the perfect balance, having the WASD and the spacebar on 0.1 and having the rest of the keys on 0.5 or higher. So why is that? The WASD is really important for movements, and the spacebar as well. You want those to actuate as soon as possible. And not just for moving forward, backward, left and right, it's also really important for counter strafing. If you know some games, counter strafing is really useful, and in some games you also need to parkour, and having that instant WASD response time and the jump, especially the jump, there's some spots that are really hard to get into that you really have to jump at the last second in order to make the jump. There's some really hard parkours like that, and having the spacebar instantly activate and the jump activate, then it will give you a huge advantage on doing those parkours, and it will make it overall easier. So yeah, having those keys on 0.1 are really useful. Now for the rest of my keys over here, I have them on 0.7. I found 0.7 millimeters a good spot to not accidentally click some of the keys. Especially for Valorant, you use Q, E, Z, and X for skills, and accidentally pressing those is a huge waste of skills or abilities. So there are a lot of games out there that you probably don't want to accidentally click the skill or the ability keys, so that you don't waste them and save them actually for a good time. It can be very crucial for winning a round. So I have the rest on 0.7 here, but feel free to change it if you find it still a little too easy to misclick. For me personally, I found 0.7 perfect for not misclicking, but at the same time having that instant actuation still. Now another key worth mentioning is the Windows key over here. I have it on 4 millimeters. Why? Because you do not want to be pressing this accidentally. When you're in a full screen game and you accidentally press Windows, or you press Windows, you will tab out of the game, and then you'll be out of the game. You won't be able to control the game, you won't be able to see the game, which is not good. And even if you're not in full screen, having the windows pop out in the middle of your screen or in the side of your screen will be very distracting and very disadvantageous. So having it on 4 millimeters will really guarantee that you do not press it accidentally. So that's pretty much everything for my actuation point settings. Let's go ahead and go to rapid trigger. Now rapid trigger is an amazing feature. It lets your key stop functioning as soon as you start lifting it off by 0.15 millimeters. But it can also give you some disadvantages. So which keys should you have rapid trigger on? For me personally, I have WASD again, because stopping your movement instantly is a huge requirement in some games. Now, especially in games like Valorant, moving while shooting is not the go. If you move while shooting, then all of your bullets will miss and not hit your crosshair. So it really gives you amazing advantages having rapid trigger on your movement keys, WASD and space, so that you can instantly stop when you want to. And not just stopping, it will also help you spam better. How? Well, if you imagine it, if your key, as soon as you lift it up 0.1 millimeters, and it will actually go ahead and be available for another click, then you can just go ahead and click it as soon as possible, and just, you know, spamming the key will be so much more effective and faster. And those are pretty much the most important keys to have rapid trigger on, the WASD and the spacebar. But feel free to turn on rapid trigger on any keys that you think you want to spam and have a faster deactivation time. For me personally, I have all of them almost turned on, except for these keys. L shift or the shift key, and numbers 4 and 5. Now specifically for Valorant or a lot of FPS games, shift is the walk key. Now if you don't want to make noise and you just want to walk and be really sneaky, then you want to keep holding down that shift. If you accidentally lift off your fingers 0.1 millimeters, which happened to me a lot of times, and then my character suddenly stopped walking and started running, and then every single one of my enemies knew my place and I died. You really don't want that happening, so having the rapid trigger off on the shift key is really helpful. Another key that I have my rapid trigger off is 4. Why is that? 4 is your plant and defuse button in Valorant, defaultly at least. Same idea with the shift key. Accidentally lifting off your finger 0.1 millimeters can lead you to not defuse the spike, so you will have to go ahead and start the defuse again, which will take 7 seconds, and that can lose you the round. It sounds very unlikely to happen, but trust me, it happens a lot. You don't even notice that you're doing it unless you have it on 0.1 rapid trigger. So yeah, I recommend to turn your rapid trigger off on those keys. And yeah, of course, for rapid trigger, I would recommend the lowest point, or apparently the highest sensitivity over here, 0.15 millimeters. So now let's go ahead and go to Tachyon mode. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it the right way, I'm reading it the right way, but Tachyon mode. Tachyon mode optimizes your keyboard for input speed. When enabled, every key press responds as fast as possible. The RGB effects are disabled and the brightness is soft capped for an optimal result. Analog stability might be affected. So just like I said in the start of the video, the RGB might have an effect in the performance. So turning Tachyon mode on will disable the RGB effects, and it will lower your brightness to only 70%, and then that's the max you can go. Apparently it helps give your keyboard faster input speed, so it will give you 1 millisecond advantage. Now for some people this might not feel noticeable, but hey, if you really want the best setting, the most advantage, then you would want the Tachyon mode on and having that 1 millisecond response time instead of the 2 millisecond response time. Now it won't be noticeable for some, but hey, for FPS games and for fast-paced games and you really need that 0.1 or those few milliseconds and it might give you an advantage, then having Tachyon mode on is really helpful. And it will just overall make your keyboard and your movements and your input more responsive and more snappier. So I recommend turning Tachyon mode on. Just take note though, you won't have the effects, RGB effects, but you can still have some RGB on your keyboard. As you can see from mine over here, it still has the Inferno Fireplace RGB orange yellow theme over there. It's not flickering anymore like when you have the Tachyon mode off, but hey, I think it's worth it. I prioritize performance more than the colors. Now for the remap over here, you can go ahead and play with that. It won't really affect the performance of the keyboard. You can change whatever you want over here. Now for the advanced keys over here, I like using mod tap. Make sure you use the keys that you don't really use for FPS games or for when you're gaming. Now for me, that's the menu, and then the right control, the function key, and then the right shift key. I rarely use those and almost not use those in gaming, so you can go ahead and set that to your mod tap, so you don't accidentally press the up, left, right, the function you set to mod tap. But yeah, that will be it for my settings and my recommendations. I think these are the best settings for FPS games, and for me specifically, I play Valorant, but for some other games you might have different. Some games use different walk shift keys, some games use different diffuse and plant spike keys, or maybe you don't have a plant spike but you have some keys that you know that you don't want to accidentally let go of. Then make sure you turn off rapid trigger on those keys. But yeah, I will go ahead and share my code over here, my Wooting code over here in the description and in the comments down below. So if you want to use these settings, you can go ahead and put them on your keyboard, on your Wootility. I don't know how this will affect on the Wooting ATHE and other Wooting keyboards. You got my point. If you watch the video, you probably know the best settings and the reason why you have to set those settings on that actuation point and that rapid trigger on or off. If you have any more comments, questions, or suggestions, just feel free to comment it down below, and I will try to respond to as much of you as possible. And I pray and hope that you learned something amazing from this video. And yeah, I pray and hope that you enjoyed. I would also really appreciate a like and a subscribe. It would really mean a lot for me. And yeah, I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to stay grateful, and remember that Jesus loves you. Bye bye.